Dogs pull on leash for varying reasons. Usually it's just because they're interested in some sight, scent, or sound. And that's just how they come preconditioned with this behavior of, I don't know how to walk politely on a leash. So we teach it to them. So what I'm going to do is suggest you have a few options, okay? You can use a regular collar like this puppy that's pictured on here, or you can use a front clip style harness. I really like the front clip style harnesses because it puts less pressure on their throat, and their throats are super sensitive, so I don't want to do any damage unintentionally. But this front clip harness can be purchased from a place called Positively Perfect in Regina. It's a Soft Touch Concepts front clip harness, and it is the model is a Sensation. That's a lot, but anyways, the Mooshar Humane Society also sells these as well. To be able to have your dog walk on a loose leash and not drag you around, what you need to do is start off by establishing some routines. So for example, the first routine I'm going to establish is I want the dog on my left side. My big focus here over the near term is going to be keeping the dog on the left side, and if they pull, I stop and I back up 5 to 10 feet until they come with me. Then I proceed again. I'm not saying anything throughout this. I'm not being like, no. Each time I stop, I'm being quiet. I'm just letting the leash do the work and me back up and walk forward. So for this 5-month-old dog, doesn't have any walking skills, you'll find out in quick order how well the dog will learn how to walk with just a little bit of consistency. So we're going to keep it really simple. It's like you pull, I stop and back up. I don't expect the dog to walk beside me like it is. I mean, I like that, but the issue is pulling. They charge at something, I stop and I back up, because I want to convey through trial and error that when you pull and you charge at something, it doesn't get you where you want to go. Next, I'm going to add to this keeping the dog on my left side. So if they sneak behind me, I'm just going to kind of gently place them back. If they try to walk in front of me, I'm going to gently place them back on that left side. Once again, the dog does not have to walk right beside me. That's really difficult for a dog to do for an extended period of time. I really want to make this simple and easy, and then just understand, don't pull me, and stay on my left. If you have a front clip style harness, I would make sure that the leash is always between you and the dog. So right there, I just reposition the dog on the side. It's not a correction, I'm just repositioning it. So my intention is just to put them back there, not to get frustrated or leash pop them or anything. So I just want you to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes getting into a habit of stopping and backing up when the dog pulls, as well as keeping them on that one side. You're going to do that for the first 5 to 10 minutes of your first walk. Next, and the third piece of it, is I'm going to start to randomly food reward the dog when it's in a position I like. So I might stop and back up a few times, and then the dog starts to walk beside me and is doing really well. Then I will randomly reward that by giving them a tasty bit of food from my pocket. I like to use whole meat, cooked meat, because it's super high value and they love it. But basically I'm doing something called capturing, which is where I reward a behavior that the dog's offering. So I'm not beckoning it from them. This puppy's just like, hey, I'll stare at you sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you a food reward sometimes. So I'm not doing it every time. I'm just rewarding the dog when it starts strutting and staring at me beside me. And they start to self-correct really well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to verbally praise the dog as well when they are attentive to me and in that nice heel position beside. So I'm gonna offer some praise like, oh, you're such a sweet boy, or you're walking so nice beside me, and then I'll food reward at the end. I'm only giving verbal praise when the dog is like strutting like it is beside me. I'm not giving it verbal praise if it's looking away from me and is just in a good position, because often I've found that when I praise them when they're just not pulling, but they're not paying attention to me, they just start to pull. When you are capturing with the dog and food rewarding them for walking in a good position, just make sure that if you stop and you back up to reset them after they've pulled, don't food reward them for at least anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds. I don't want the dog to accidentally learn, pull, you stop and back up, 3, food reward. So that's a common mistake that people do, is they reset the dog and then the dog's beside them for a moment and they food reward the dog and then the dog pulls again. And that will effectively teach them the wrong thing. Next, I'm going to show you how to get your dog to stop sniffing everything in town. Now, depends on the situation, but the first line of defense is if I'm walking beside a grassy area and my dog is pulling towards something, I'm going to stop and back up and practice one of the first steps of the training that we did. If they pull, you stop and back up and reset them. Now, if they didn't pull and you got to a spot and they stopped and they're kind of like beside you or behind you, in that circumstance, what I would do, step 1, is I would try to call them off. So in the video, you will see the puppy actually move away from some things, and it's just because I used it. The dog has really good name recognition, so I'm like, Rick, come, and he's like, oh, okay, and he ran away from the scent, and I food rewarded him. Even though they smell something, if I call them off of it and they come, I'm still going to food reward the dog, because that develops a positive association with, oh, I'll give up this interesting scent and I'll come to you. And if they do that, I'm like, okay, I like that. Because I have just dragged dogs away from scents before for years, and all they learned through all those repetitions were to sniff faster, and then I'll drag them away. So with subsequent dogs of mine, I learned that if I call them away and they actually come, then I will actually food reward them, because they'll be like, oh, it's awesome to come away from stuff of interest and come back to you. The next piece of it is the dogs that will not respond verbally to you calling them off sniffing something, is I will do something called a body block, where I move towards the dog and I gently use my body posture and personal space bubble to move through them where they're stuck sniffing on something. And then I'll just gesture with my hand like, let's go, and start the walk again. There's no food anywhere relating around that. It's just a secondary way to follow through if they don't listen to when you call them off of the scent. And then you just keep moving on. What I would suggest is to walk the dog on street side for the first few walks anyways, just to make it easier for you, so the scent is on the opposite side of the dog, and that will really make your initial progress happen faster, because you're just dealing with a few less kind of distractions, so to speak. The last thing you will implement is what to do with your dog when you pass distractions like people walking by. Now, what I would do is I'd walk a little bit further away from them. So like minimum kind of 10 to say 30 or 40 feet. That little bit of extra distance will make it easier to control your dog over the near term. I'm not going to try to pass someone at a 6-foot distance where my dog can just run out and actually make contact with them. So I'm going to be, 10 to 30 or 40 feet away. And what I'm going to practice is the very same simple things I did before. If my dog tries to go in front of me to go see them, I'm going to gently put them back onto my left side. If they go behind me, same deal. If they're paying attention to me and they're kind of walking in a position I like, I can, give them some verbal praise and follow it with a food reward, because I want to reinforce that behavior and want them to want to enjoy walking beside me more. If they pull towards them, then I'll stop and I'll back up and reset the dog. But it's very simple. I'm going to practice the exact same things as I did without a distraction. Sometimes you can get your dog to sit while the distraction goes away over the near term. But once again, I would just be a little bit further away to make that transition easier. Teaching a dog to walk on a loose leash takes time. A lot of it has to do with you learning the muscle memory and kind of reflexive response of what to do when. because ultimately our dogs follow us. So however you are leading them, they're following in kind. So once you learn how to convey to the dog that walking on a loose leash is going to be the best thing for them, they'll do it as soon as they figure it out. Okay, so just be patient with yourself while you're learning, as well with the dog, as best as you can. And just be repetitive. You really want to hunker down and do these same 3 to 5 things, because it will make it easier for your dog to understand what's going to happen. And they can learn through trial and error. Oh, okay, when this happens, when I do this rather, this is what you do. Okay, that makes sense. A big issue people have, just to close this off, is they try too many different methods too fast. And the dog just, even though the dog's doing the same thing, they're pulling, for example. If we do a series of different things to that, to address that pulling, it just makes it harder for them to figure out the cause and effect of it. So we want to make it super simple and help them understand which path to take. And this method and this video training will absolutely get you there.